your eyes, wake the fuck up, America. They control your lives with fear, just scaring you with terror on your screen, telling you what to believe.
We do not forgive. And we do not forget.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. Today is Thursday, October 5th, maybe? Probably? I don't know. So I had a chance to meet up with one of my subscribers last night and her husband in Texas, in Dennett, Texas. And like the subscriber I met before that in Colorado, and the subscriber I met before that in New York, it seems like everyone's having the same issue. They feel totally isolated and totally alone because they have nobody that's awake to talk to. And the girl I was talking to last night told me that she had a falling out with family members because of trying to wake them. And I can't stress it enough. I can't wake my family. And it's not like we're just laying out crazy conspiracy theories without any proof. Chemtrailing, it's out there. It's out in the open. They're doing it. Weather as a weapon. We have President Kennedy talking about controlling the weather back in the 60s. They're doing it now. So many things you can prove outright with their own patents, with their own FEMA drill schedules, with everything, and people just don't want to listen because you know what? They don't want to listen. If someone decides to start listening and understand that everything is not as it seems, they have to make a change. Some people don't want to do that, and it's amazing because some of the strongest people I thought I knew want nothing to do with this. They'd rather just keep pushing forward, going to work every day, watching television, taking their little vacations here and there, so forth, so on, and blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, the powers that be keep raising prices on food. They keep raising prices on gas. They keep taxing and taxing and taxing and taxing. For instance, I just got a text saying that my cell phone bill's ready. So my cell phone bill went from $230 every 2 months to $270 every 2 months. Because you know why? Exactly. If you don't like it, whatever. And that's exactly where we find ourselves right now. I am really disappointed watching other channels that are still chasing our condolences to the darkest day in American history and blah. FEMA was in Vegas for a drill. I think you can still find the schedule. They were there 3 days prior to the drill. Shocking, right? Shocking. The shooter's name, Paddock, means corral. The people were inside an arena. They were corralled. Mike from On Point Preparedness beat me to this, but last night I watched the news where I was a 10-year reserve Army guy and an EMT, and I rescued this guy that got shot yesterday, but now today I'm on television and everything's fine. I got shot in the foot. And the story goes, when I came across him, he had the tourniquet on in the wrong spot. Someone else had put a tourniquet on because he was bleeding out from the foot wound that he received from a sniper with an assault rifle 1,000 feet away. So that wouldn't have been a hole in his foot. It would have been like that. The EMT moved the tourniquet from his knee to above his knee. Well, here's a little secret. If you've watched my channel, you know that Richie from Boston's big time into first aid. If his foot was bleeding out, you put the tourniquet below his calf. This guy claimed he was in the Army, an Army reservist for 10 years and an EMT, so he moved the tourniquet above his knee. The foot, tourniquet right there to stop the bleeding, not above the knee because you'll stop the calf, and yet the guy is standing there the next day on the news. All of a sudden, the bullet wound's gone, everything's fine. The 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes he had a tourniquet on, that didn't affect his calf at all, even though there was no oxygen going to it until he actually received medical help. The story is bullshit. It was a FEMA drill. Nobody died. I can't stress that enough. So all you guys, my condolences. I know somebody that saw, guess what? All the people that were there that weren't in on the drill saw what they thought was people getting shot. You know why? Because they use Hollywood. They use incredible special effects. We've seen it thousands of times in crisis actor ads where they show the special effects and all this stuff. Yes, they can do that. And you know how we know? Because we caught them doing it at the Boston Marathon bombing hoax. Come on, people. This was a FEMA drill. FEMA was there 3 days prior setting up. It was on their own schedule. Every single witness that comes out that got shot or saw someone who got shot, their story is completely wrong. It doesn't make any sense. So if people actually got injured and shot, why do they have people up there lying about their gunshot wounds? Oh, I got shot in the foot yesterday so badly that I was bleeding out to the point where a tourniquet had to be put on on my knee, and then an EMT came by and moved it to above my knee. Anybody with EMT training, you do not put, if you're bleeding here, don't put the tourniquet here or here. You put it here, because when you put a tourniquet on, not only does it stop the blood, it stops the oxygen, and the muscle that's affected by the oxygen stoppage withers and dies. And yet this guy was standing up there, no problem. I just got shot yesterday. Actually, I'm not even in the hospital anymore. I'm at a sound studio doing an interview. It's bullshit. So stop giving condolences to people that didn't die. People may think people died because they were there in the chaos and blah, 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 but it's all bullshit. And I'll stand by that. Richie from Boston.
The anomalies in the sky around me are just, they're in 360 degrees. This one happens to be the most dramatic at the moment, but orange clouds at 8 o'clock in the morning, these crazy clouds here, the purple blue, the rainbow. Honestly, I don't know what direction to turn, but this is what happens at the Great Lakes, okay guys? This is from the towers that are charging the shit out of the atmosphere to get Hurricane Irma to come shore at 890 something millibars. Okay, these are the towers that are manipulating the atmospheric pressure on so many different levels. Look at that. This is not normal. I don't care what anybody says. Rainbows don't do that. They just don't do that. They don't. That's it. These pock marks on the waves, they're not normal. These iridescent clouds, these aren't normal. I don't even know what to say about that. The orange cloud over there. This is atmosphere charging, guys. This is what happens when you have a blanket of antenna that are 100 and 200 feet apart from each other, blanketing the entire country.
I am Inspector Anonymous, retired private detective, forensics specialist, and founder and director of the Citizen Intelligence Agency. I'm also a pro se esquire for the Pro Se Justice Center, our legal arm for filing and litigating against those in government that usurp our laws and the color of law in our state and nation. Our presentation is very disturbing, but not hopeless after researching the subject of weather manipulation. However, this documentary is not about weather manipulation, but it is about weaponizing the weather for control of the masses and punishing those nations, states, and politicians that don't follow the script for global domination by the Illumi Corp. This year is only a dry run to test the fear factor of the masses, destroy infrastructure, eradicate or rehabilitate the homeless by reprogramming their heart, minds, and their bodies through temporary deterrents. The islands were destroyed to displace the populace to the mainlands. This is a cheap and effective way to steal homesteads through abandonment. You could state, a cheap way to evict people off their property. The rich and powerful must have a place to vacation without having to deal with the dregs of society. Hurricane Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Jose became bulldozers to mow down and destroy the lives and property of the masses. Texas, Georgia, and Florida are governed by people claiming to one person when they are another, portraying different lives as different politicians in other states, Congress, Senate and government departments, in which are behind the weaponizing the weather. Geoengineering experts are playing both sides from the middle by being scientists pushing the global warming agenda and weaponizing the weather, while being activists against weather manipulation, climate control, atmospheric spraying and HAARP. They will be exposed in this documentary and a convening state grand jury. Our institute, in cooperation with the Citizen Intelligence Agency, has made a visual forensic comparison in over 1 million photo and video data files comparing ear, eye lobes, and nose biometric measurements, palm print identification, tattoos, scars, moles and physical anomalies, including identification in duplication of wives, children, and parents of these persons of interest using other aliases, comparisons by facial recognition and proprietary morphing software. This documentary is to educate the masses about weather and how it has been manipulated this year to terrorize, decrease population, test their weapon of destruction, and last but not least fill their coiffures for the next elections in 2018, boost their stock prices and destroy the insurance industry, crash the economy. Illumi Corp destroyed the health industry, now they are coming after your property and lives. We must form a grand jury to charge these governors, federal department heads and their cronies that actively participated in this hurricane deception. Without further delay, let's learn about the weather as we reveal step by step how the industrial military complex weaponized the weather.
Anytime you look up into the sky, you may see clouds. But no two clouds look alike, and some look very different from each other. So, what makes clouds? And why do some clouds look thin and wispy, while others look big and fluffy? Clouds are formed by water vapor in the atmosphere that condenses into very small water droplets or ice crystals, and then gathers together. When water on the earth evaporates, it turns into invisible vapor that rises until it reaches colder air high in the sky. In these colder temperatures, the vapor condenses or changes back into a liquid. Eventually, the water droplets will fall back to earth as rain, snow, or ice. This is known as the water cycle. There is always at least some water vapor in the air. Clouds only form when the atmosphere cannot hold any more vapor. Since warm air can hold more water vapor than cool air, clouds are often formed when the temperature cools. Although they may look light and fluffy, clouds are actually very heavy. A single cloud may weigh as much as several million tons. They do not fall because warm air currents push up against the tiny droplets, and individual droplets are not heavy enough to overcome the resistance of the air below them until they join together into much larger drops. There are 5 basic types of clouds: cirrus, stratus, stratocumulus, cumulus, and cumulonimbus. Cirrus clouds are high and thin. Because the air is so cold at high altitudes, these clouds are made of ice crystals instead of water droplets. Cirrus clouds are sometimes called mare's tails because they are shaped something like the tail of a horse. The appearance of cirrus clouds often means a day of fair weather. Stratus clouds are shaped like flat sheets. They may occur at low, middle, or high altitudes. When stratus clouds layer thickly, they may produce light rain or snow. Stratocumulus clouds make rolls or ripples and can occur at low, middle, or high altitudes. Cumulus clouds are puffy and small when they first form, but they may grow into much taller cloud formations. When lit by the sun, cumulus clouds are bright white and are often seen on days of good weather. Cumulonimbus clouds are thunderclouds. Heavy and dense, they are very large and similar to cumulus clouds. They may produce lightning, rain, hail, and tornadoes. Different types of clouds can indicate different kinds of weather, but aside from that, identifying clouds is fun. Next time you're outside, look up and see if you can identify the clouds where you are.
They are sometimes seen as threatening funnel clouds descending from stormy skies. Others can be nearly invisible, like a ghostly spiral of wind skimming the sea surface. These eerie columns of rotating air are known as waterspouts, commonly defined as tornadoes over water. Waterspouts usually develop over warm tropical ocean waters. They're spotted in the Florida Keys more than any other place in the world. They've also been seen over the waters of the Great Lakes. Scientists that study waterspouts generally put them in two categories: fair weather and tornadic. The tornadic waterspouts may often begin as tornadoes over land and then move over water. They also form in severe thunderstorms over a body of water. They can wreak havoc with high winds, hail, and dangerous lightning. Fair weather waterspouts develop in calmer weather. They form only over open water, developing at the surface and actually climbing skyward towards the clouds. The size of all waterspouts can range from just a few feet to several hundred feet wide. Research shows that fair weather waterspouts exhibit a 5-stage life cycle. Stage 1 is the formation of a disk on the surface of the water, known as a dark spot. Stage 2 is a spiral pattern on the water surface. Stage 3 is a formation of a spray ring. Stage 4 is where the waterspout becomes a visible funnel, and the life cycle ends with Stage 5, where the waterspout decays. Like many forces in nature, waterspouts can be both beautiful and dangerous. They've been known to overturn boats, damage large ships, and put lives in jeopardy. If you spot one, exercise extreme caution and keep your distance. Don't leave your safety up in the air. Try to avoid these turbulent twisters.
If you look in the center of the water spout, you can actually see the water being sucked up and spinning as it goes up. You can actually see the water itself. Can y'all see that? That is amazing footage right there of an amazing cloud. Wow. Look at the cyclonic action. You can see the clouds on the other side of it as it sucks up the water.
is a combination of many things. It never stays the same, it's always changing. Precipitation will come in many forms, depending if the temperature is cold or warm. If it's cold, you see, it could be windy. Blowing snow and sleet could make the roads icy. If it's warm, you know, you could see a tornado. Watch the rain pouring down and see a thunderstorm show. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Hot, cold, wet, dry, look into the sky. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Stormy, cloudy, calm, clear. Weather happens all year. Hey! Spin around, do the tornado. 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 Meteorology is the study of the weather. If we look at the climate, we can predict it much better. Warm fronts, cold fronts, lightning and thunder. To find the temperature, you can use a thermometer. Hurricanes form in the warm ocean water, the most powerful storm when compared to any other. Tornadoes are smaller, but the damage can be greater. A watch means it's possible, a warning, take cover. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Hot, cold, wet, dry, look into the sky. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Stormy, cloudy, calm, clear. Weather happens all year. Hey! Dance like it's windy. Dance like it's warm. Dance like it's cold. Now dance in a storm. Clouds come in many different sizes and shapes. Cold air rises and makes water vapor that creates condensation, then precipitation. Here's a cloud list: fog, stratus, cumulus, nimbus, cirrus. Lightning is striking at 50,000 degrees. I hear the sound of thunder and feel the cool weather breeze. Red sky in the morning, take warning of the storm. Red sky in the night, the weather will be a delight. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Hot, cold, wet, dry, look into the sky. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Stormy, cloudy, calm, clear. Weather happens all year. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Hot, cold, wet, dry, look into the sky. Hey, the weather is the state of the atmosphere. Stormy, cloudy, calm, clear. Weather happens all year. Hey!
No matter where you live, storms can happen 365 days a year, as can severe weather. In that, Mother Nature knows no calendar. There have been deadly tornadoes and severe thunderstorm events in every calendar month. Of course, as the atmosphere warms, storms do become more frequent and numerous in the spring and summer across the country. But even in the cooler season months, severe weather can threaten. Typically, severe storm activity is maximized in the south and southeast during the winter months. From there, the climatological maxima of severe weather slowly drifts both north and west into the summer months, before returning back south by winter again. The reason for this is the annual track of the jet stream, which moves north as the pole warms and south as it cools. Because of this, all 50 states can see severe weather, and typically each region has a time of peak occurrence. The big takeaway? No matter where you live, severe weather is possible in America.
You're thinking, how do thunderstorms form? It's basically a difference of atmospheric gradient temperatures, all right? When you have cold and hot, they don't like each other, so they start swirling around and then rising into the atmosphere, and that's what we call convection. That creates clouds. The further that warm air rises in the atmosphere, the more it will condense, condensate, and eventually precipitate in the form of some rain. So this is an early stage in the cumulus stage. Cumulus clouds billow up, and then again, as we get that convection to last for a couple hours, the cloud begins to build high 10, 15,000 feet into the air, and then that precipitation starts to fall. But there's an issue here. Sometimes storms can grow very rapidly over a short amount of time and become 45 or 50,000 feet tall. That's above where jumbo jets usually fly, the typical airplanes that you see overhead, and you get supercell thunderstorms. I also have a graphic depicting that in just a moment. And eventually the thunderstorm will exhaust itself. It'll run out of energy. You run out of updrafts and downdrafts, and you see the dissipating stage as it rains itself out. So the heavy rain comes in the mature stage, the thunderstorm development, and then eventually it's all bye-bye from there, and that's what you like to see. Now look at this dynamic graphic. I'll back up so you can see what's going on here. This is the development of a severe thunderstorm. Basically, you get these around frontal boundaries where cold meets warm, and you have a lot of cold, dry air aloft. That means in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and warm, moist air at the surface. That warm, moist air likes to rise, and sometimes you'll get updrafts into the thunderstorm many different directions, and then they begin to rotate in a column of air through the thunderstorm cloud, which is our, does anybody know? All right, I'll wait for it. Cumulonimbus cloud. That's right. Whoever got that, great job. Cumulonimbus clouds look like that classic anvil shape, and the more rotation we can get, that is the formation of a supercell thunderstorm, which can ultimately lead to the formation of tornadoes. Now, in our region, we don't really have to worry about them too often, but every now and then a storm is severe enough to create that. And you can see that in this graphic here, that column of air that is swirling about, that anvil on the back end, and typically the thunderstorm will move in this general direction, heavy rain out ahead of a tornado, and that's what makes it so dangerous, as the tornadoes are often obscured by the heavy rain out ahead of it. You'll also get what we call a gust front. That's a rapid downdraft in front of the storm, so that's why you can be standing there on a day with clear skies, and eventually they begin to cloud over. You'll hear the thunder, and then whoosh, a giant flow of air. That is out ahead of the thunderstorm, and then you know things are about to get a little bit serious. So let's recap. You need three things to form a thunderstorm: a source of moisture. You also need unstable atmosphere and a mechanism to trigger the storm. So lift, instability, and moisture. Remember this acronym LIM. Lift, instability, and moisture. Lift is that convection with the warm air rising into the atmosphere, creating the conditions needed for thunderstorms. Instability is directly related to lift. Once that air is up in the atmosphere and it condenses, the atmosphere kind of doesn't like that, doesn't know what to do with the air, and it creates the clouds and eventually that turbulent weather. And then, of course, the moisture out over the ocean is typically good for tropical systems, which is just basically a cluster of thunderstorms. But you can also have lakes and other sources of water. And if you don't have that, any flow of air from the south out over the Gulf of Mexico can get carried onto the land, and eventually, yes, that will create the formation of thunderstorms. So LIM, lift, instability, and moisture.
Weekend of April 29th and 30th this year, a series of thunderstorms slammed the southern and midwestern U.S., spawning flooding and tornadoes that killed at least 20 people. The Monday afterward, I saw this satellite animation on Twitter. It showed the thunderstorm's formation and movement across the U.S., and I was like, wow, that is very cool and a little bit unlike any satellite image I've ever seen of a storm. I wrote a note to the National Weather Service saying that I wanted to know everything about this storm's formation and They wrote me back, and then I gave them my phone number, and then they called me because I have a very cool life. Here is why that satellite animation looks so impressive, and how it shows the perfect combination of factors that led to those devastating storms. The first thing to note is that this video looks different from other satellite videos of storms, not just because the storm was pretty epic, but because this is one of the first visualizations created from a new weather satellite that launched last November. It's called GOES-16, where GOES stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite, and it's the latest in a series of weather satellites that first started launching in 1975. GOES-16 is still in its testing phase, and this is some of the first imagery from the satellite that's been made public. It provides significantly higher resolution than older satellites, both in terms of image quality and number of frames taken. We're talking 4 times the resolution gathered 5 times faster than older satellites. The satellite collects real-time data as frequently as every 30 seconds, allowing a better understanding of exactly what happens with storms like this one. But enough about the satellite, let's talk about the storm. In the first few seconds of the video, you can see a stationary front stretching across the Midwestern United States. A stationary front forms when a cool air mass and a warm air mass meet, but neither side is able to overtake the other. That can lead to cloudy weather and a lot of rain. This particular stationary front was set up by a cool air mass across the northern and western part of the country and unseasonably warm weather in the south and east. Since both of these masses were similar sizes, neither could move the other, so that's our stationary front. There was a lot of warm, wet air along that front, trapped under a cap of warm, dry air. The warm, moist air wanted to rise, but it couldn't get through the hotter air above it. Until finally it broke through. There were similar conditions across much of the Midwest, which allowed thunderstorms to develop really quickly along the entire front. There were also winds running mostly parallel to the front, so these thunderstorms moved in the same direction, one after another. That's what meteorologists call training, because you end up with a bunch of thunderstorms moving along the same path, like train cars moving along a track. The cap of warmer, drier air was broken in succession all down the front. The warm, moist air at the surface shot up and cooled, and water vapor condensed, releasing tons of energy, and also all that rain. Some of the storms that developed were supercell thunderstorms, the really severe kind that can have super strong winds and cause flash flooding, and also sometimes produce tornadoes. Thanks to the amazing resolution of the GOES-16 satellite, you can see one of the telltale signs of a severe thunderstorm, those little dark splotches. In intense thunderstorms like supercell thunderstorms, warm, moist air shoots up into the atmosphere, cooling as it rises. Eventually, its temperature becomes the same as the ambient air. When that happens, the storm flattens out at the top, forming what's known as the thunderstorm's anvil, because the cloud kind of looks like an anvil, all flat at the top. But in the very center, where the air was rising the fastest, the air shoots up past the top of the thunderstorm anvil in what's called, appropriately, an overshooting top. That's what those little black splotches are. And this is what they look like from above. Meanwhile, this stationary front unfortunately remained stationary as more warm, wet air was sucked up into the atmosphere. And so not only did the rain keep falling, it kept falling in the exact same place, in some cases more than 25 centimeters in one day. The next day, the same system spawned tornadoes in East Texas. You can see some of the parent thunderstorms here. By the end of the video, the thunderstorms had been going for almost 48 hours, stretching across much of the south and east. In a normal situation, by this time, the jet stream, a high-level wind pattern that usually runs west to east across North America, would have blown the whole thing substantially to the east, possibly even out into the Atlantic. But it just so happens that the jet stream dips and waves occasionally, and on the weekend of April 29th and 30th, those dips were highly amplified, making the jet stream move more north to south rather than east to west. So instead of quickly moving east, the storm moved very slowly, and there were multiple days of thunderstorms across the same areas. That led to a devastating flood and loss of life. But with the new high-resolution data that scientific instruments like NOAA's GOES-16 are collecting and sending down to Earth in real time, we will only get better at identifying and reacting to these events. This episode of SciShow, and also lots of other great things, are brought to you by the federal government spending money on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration so that everybody has access to remarkable data like this.
Explanation of how tornadoes form. Here in East Tennessee, we average about 4 a year. Back across the middle part of the United States, in an area called Tornado Alley, they can see thousands per year, but they generally form the same way. Cold, dry air moving in from the west, warm, moist air coming in from the south. The combination of these causes the air to rotate in the mid-levels. Eventually, what will happen is this rotating air will turn from a horizontal direction to a vertical direction within the thunderstorm itself. This is called the updraft of a thunderstorm. Let's slice this storm in half, get a little bit better view of this. Again, what will happen, the updraft within the storm rotates. Over time, it rotates faster and faster, and eventually what will happen from this rotating storm, you'll get a lowering or a rain-free area of the cloud that's called the wall cloud. From that wall cloud descends the actual funnel itself. Once that funnel touches the ground, that's when you officially have a tornado.
A squall line is, simply put, a line of storms. Squall lines can also be called multi-cell linear storms, but the most common term used to identify these storms is squall line. A squall line consists of storms situated along a gust front at the leading edge of the line. The gust front acts as the system's updraft, as air is lifted upwards along the leading edge of the line, even as colder air rushes out and away from the storm's course. Lines of storms can persist for hours and even days as they move east or south. A line of storms will see its biggest severe weather threats along and just behind the gust front. The main severe weather threat from squall lines is damaging winds, but large hail and even weak tornadoes are possible. Another threat is significant flash flooding, especially in situations where the line itself is moving slowly as individual cells move over the same areas repeatedly. Linear systems are easy to track and predict, as they typically follow a pretty straight path. Lines of storms can be incredibly damaging, and thus you should always pay special attention when one is approaching your area.
Notice this waterspout is rotating clockwise. Most waterspouts and tornadoes rotate counterclockwise or cyclonic. Sometimes we were jerked upward violently as we flew through invisible waterspouts. They had not condensed yet. For me, that was the scariest part of the flight.
Don't worry, stall warning horn.
Did he say not to worry? Here's a photograph that storm chaser Martin Kucera took of our Cessna 182 orbiting a waterspout. He was in Key West for this mega outbreak too. Oddly, I found a few waterspouts rotating clockwise within the same cloud line. In this still image, you can see the track of the waterspout and also the wave train produced by the spray ring. After about an hour of orbiting waterspouts, I got so dizzy we had to land. We followed the cumulus line back to Sugarloaf Key. Along the way, we saw some really close lightning. I was so excited to see my diligence paid off. I always wanted to film a waterspout from the air with Key West in the background. I drove over to the Weather Service office in Key West and showed them the video on the big screen monitor. They said they could see our plane orbiting the waterspouts. As I mentioned earlier, waterspouts have 5 stages as determined by Dr. Joe Golden in his early research back in the late 60s and early 70s. The dark spot, shown here, is stage 1 and represents a complete vortex column from cloud base to sea surface. You can see a dark spot for miles in an airplane. Here is an example of dark spots in at least one funnel above them. And here is video of dark spots under a long cumulus line. The spiral pattern is the primary growth phase of a waterspout, characterized by alternating dark and light colored surface bands around the dark spot. Here are some photographs taken by Dr. Golden of the spiral stages. Here is video of a weak spiral stage transitioning to a spray ring stage. Here is video taken late in the day of a possible dark spot spiral stage and the early beginning of a spray ring stage. This same area produced a spray ring and a waterspout in the clip. This video is taken from Marathon, Florida and shows a spray ring estimated at 115 miles per hour. Here is a close-up of a spray ring pushed along by rain-cooled air outflow. The mature stage is characterized by maximum intensity and organization. The decay stage is typically caused by rain-cooled air that disrupts the waterspout's upward rotation. In these shots of the decay stage, you can see the funnel become greatly distorted.
Oh, it looks pretty.
Here is video of rain-cooled air on the right pushing this waterspout quickly to the left.
Real nice spray. Real nice spray. There is a boat out there too.
Notice the wave generated by the spray ring.
Just behind that boat. Very nice looking. Okay, it's starting to bow out a little bit to the left.
It's important to note that not all dark spots form waterspouts, and they don't necessarily move from one discrete stage to the next. In my flights in the Cessna with Dan, about half the dark spots we observed produce funnels from the cloud base.
Many Americans has lost their lives, property, and their dignity through the federal government's weather manipulation as a weapon of mass destruction, from aerosol chemtrail squall lines that reached 50,000 feet into the HAARP-heated atmosphere, a wall of thunderstorm force disguised as Hurricane Harvey, Irma, Jose, Maria, and Nate. These squall lines packed a devastating 155 to 205 miles an hour winds mixed with tornadoes, packing an F2 or 4 category tornado winds that destroyed the pristine Caribbean's islands of St. Martin, Virgin Islands, Cayos, and Turks, Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Hurricane Harvey crippled Texas' economy with floods and property destruction. The hurricane deception of Irma ruined the Florida tourist industry. Harvey, Irma, Jose, Maria, and Nate has devastated the property insurance industry, and most of all, at least $500 billion of fiat currency will be printed to compensate the state for infrastructure, emergency services, public assistance, in which adds to an already critical $22 trillion national deficit. This will for sure destroy the United States economy and devalue the dollar, in which a global currency adjustment will be inevitable from the dollar. It is the intent of the Pro Se Justice Center, a senior fellow member of the Institute of Intelligence Groups and International Politics, will seek state criminal indictment under OCGA 16-11-1, by an inquisition of a grand jury for an indictment of treason and RICO for violating the citizens of Georgia's right to life, liberty, and property. Those citizens that lost their life and property should be enumerated through a class action suit. In retribution, a criminal indictment for the charge of treason and RICO should be sought by the grand jury. Once the grand jury forms in Georgia under OCGA 16-11-1, then other states will follow the Institute's lead to place those responsible for weaponizing the weather and persons of interest whom participated in Harvey, Irma, Jose, Maria, and Nate hurricane deception and enumeration in a class action suit from the Illumi Corp's corporations that reaped corporate profits from the evacuations and goods sold during the hurricane deception. There comes a time in life where the federal government's department heads, DHS, FEMA, FBI, CIA, NASA's director of NOAA and Raytheon must be brought to justice under a mirrored state constitutional amendment law for the criminal charge of treason titled under 2010 Georgia Code Title 16, Crimes and Offenses Chapter 11, Offenses Against Public Order and Safety Article 1, Treason and Other Subversive Activities Part 1, General Provision 16-11-1, Treason OCGA 16-11-1, 2010, 16-11-1. Treason. A person owing allegiance to the state commits the offense of treason when he knowingly levies war against the state, adheres to her enemies, or gives them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of the offense of treason except on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. When the overt act of treason is committed outside the state, the person charged therewith may be tried in any county in the state. B. A person convicted of the offense of treason shall be punished by death or by imprisonment for life or for not less than 15 years. This documentary is a simulated presentation of the evidence, exhibits, and expert witnesses testifying for an indictment against those involved in the hurricane deception. You as the viewer will be the 13th juror in the grand jury inquisition. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, without further delay, watch and listen to the evidence that will bring an indictment for the criminal acts of treason and high crimes and misdemeanors for hurricane deception.
Welcome to Federal Grand Jury Service. You're here today because you've been asked to take part in our democratic process by serving as a member of a federal grand jury. It's a job of great importance, grounded in the Constitution that guarantees our freedoms. The drafters of the Constitution knew that deciding whether or not to accuse someone of a crime is an enormous power. So they created the grand jury, so that the common sense, life experience, and judgment of regular citizens is brought to bear on these decisions. Grand juries investigate crimes by hearing testimony and reviewing other evidence, and they decide whether there is probable cause to believe a crime was committed by the person or entity being investigated. Only if 12 grand jurors agree that the evidence shows probable cause can the case go forward. Thus, the grand jury serves as both sword and shield. Every individual grand juror has an important role in the system. Without the active participation of people like you, regular citizens doing their public duty, the grand jury could not live up to the name given to it by the Founding Fathers, the People's Panel.
You are being offered a precious opportunity to participate directly in the process of government. Government by the people. An opportunity you may never have again. People who have served on grand juries speak with great enthusiasm about how much they learned and about how deeply involved they felt they were in the decisions they were called upon to make.
Okay, here we go. Totally not normal. 8 o'clock, what time is it? 7:30 in the morning. It's like, I don't know if you can see out there. But it's orange. It's orange. The orange cloud is back. The orange cloud is back. We have orange cloud and orange light. This is not normal.
West. This is west I'm facing. Not a little west. And kind of sort of east sun rising west. But hardcore where the sun sets west and it's 7 o'clock in the freaking morning. Okay? This is the same orange cloud we had the other day. We have a few of them and we're right by the towers. This is right near where that X was the other morning. Look at this. That's dead north, and that looks like the purple of the sunset.
And you can see the water rising off the lake. And this is not a quiet lake. This is not a calm morning. I'm sorry, people, but this is what happens when you guys go home after your vacations. This is what this country is doing to us. Look at that purple sky. That is so not normal. That is dead north. Look at these orange clouds. Look at this. There are you could, if you could hear the sound of the towers. I'm sorry, people, but this is not normal. This is 7:15 in the morning, facing west. And if you face north, it's orange and purple. What the fuck is going on here? And how come nobody noticed? Somebody has to notice from somewhere. Maybe I might be the only one up here right now, but this is crazy. Look at this. I don't even know what direction to turn this camera in. So many weird things are happening in the sky right now. And it's not normal. I mean, yeah, the water rises over the lakes, but not in patches. Not in patches of roughness. And look at these long waves. These are frequency waves. Like these are not wind waves. Look at that. I don't even know where to put the camera. I'm so frustrated. This is so not normal, people. This is so not normal. This fucking world has got to wake up and start paying attention to what is happening in our skies above our heads. These are done by microwave towers. They are scattered all over there. They're all over here. We have X's in our skies marking spots where they are actually radiating the atmosphere so that they can bring things in at 890 millibars. That's going to destroy the entire location that it lands in. People, these things are not natural. You can change pressures. And it creates, not maybe here, but certainly in other parts of the country. But these are good benchmarks to take a look at this. And look at that crazy bird. Doesn't even know where he's going. Look at him. He's just freaking out. People, this is so not normal. This is so not normal. Look at these clouds. Look at that. People, this is dead west. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. And you see these rolling waves that are like bumpy cakes? Look at this. This isn't normal. This is not how our waves roll in. Look at this. It's like one big bumpy cake that's just kind of shaking. I don't even know how to make this video. I don't even know. I honestly, you guys, I don't know if I can show you the purplish there. This cloud that's just growing right here above my head. The orange cloud here, or this orange cloud here. Seriously, this is so screwed up from every direction I turn. I don't even know. Look at that. That's green. Down there, it's pink and purple. You guys, I've been coming up here almost 5 decades. This is not what it looks like. This is not what it looks like. I don't care what anybody says. This is not what it's ever looked like in 5 decades of my life on this beach. I've seen that white tree grow into little trees. Not super little, but you know, little enough. It's worth commenting on. This tree and I both know that this is not normal.
Look at these waves. And it's warm. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. But it was in the 40s last night. Look at this. Look at these waves. Where the hell are they coming from, everybody? I'll tell you where they're coming from. They're coming from the frequency of the towers that are dead across there, that are dead across there. Look at this. This is just not normal. This rain cloud right here, this gray one is being made right here with the sound of the frequencies that are just, I don't know if we can pick them up. I wish somebody could tell me how to capture and isolate those sounds because they are horrible. Look at this. Shame on everybody. Shame on everybody. You guys want to know why Irma's coming in the way it is? Because all this crap is happening up here in Grand Traverse Bay. That's why. Because we have orange clouds at 7 o'clock in the morning due west. Because the sky is pink to the north and green and purple. Because this stuff isn't normal. Because we have bumpy Cape waves. And because the sound is horrific. The sound of these towers is just awful.
Through Corp's enormous federal funding of the military, we can develop new forms of warfare and population reduction. The public can't imagine what we were in the process of developing. Soon, even the weather will be a weapon under our control. We will be able to create droughts, floods, hurricanes, and even tsunamis with no fingerprints attached.
There has been a very strange sonic anomaly happening in the South Atlantic. And here it is in this area. I'll show you again. Let this loop run and show it to you. There it is right there. In this particular area between South America and Africa. Almost spanning, well, it is more than spanning half the globe. This thing is gigantic. It's absolutely gigantic. Now, I did my homework, and this, whatever it is, and I have some other things I want to show you, some very, very interesting things that I want to show you about this and what possibly created it, where it originated from, and possibly why. There was no weather associated with it, believe it or not. There wasn't even clouds getting out of the way of this massive structure that was created with sonic waves. This is frequency. This is a sonic anomaly. Here is a still picture of it, and as you can see, it begins, this is not the beginning down here, the actual origination point begins right here, a little over a third of the way across the southern portion of the Atlantic between Brazil and the continent of Africa, in the southern portion of Africa. That's where it begins. And there is a little diamond shape type aperture at the bottom of it, and it spans this entire area all the way up past Europe. You see, it's absolutely gigantuous, and there was no weather associated with it. So I believe that it was an experiment possibly having to do with the space fence. I'm not quite sure, but wait till you see what I have to show you. Here is the area in which it originated, and before I get to the actual area that it originated from, I want to show you two islands that I found in the South Atlantic. This island has no name. There is no name associated with this island. I call it Island with Obscurements, and the reason I call it that is because this is a picture of the island. It's an old image, and it has obscurements that are drawn in of whiteness that pretend to be clouds, and augmentation of clouds that are there and other clouds that are drawn in. There are obscurements on this nameless island. We cannot tell for some reason what's under these obscurements. Whenever I find that on Google, that means that whatever powers that be have instructed the people at Google, this must be obscured and you are allowed to use this image and no other. That's what's going on. This has everything to do with powers of government. Alright, let me show you this other island that I have found. This is, there are TTAs at Georgetown on Ascension Island. Let's zoom in down on this island. Has an airport. It's quite a beautiful island, but wait till you see all the TTAs on this island. And there are so many that I truly believed the signals originated from this area. Here's a TTA right here. That is an array right there near the airport. And I'll try to show you all of the TTAs that I found. There are quite a few. This, by the way, is a military island. I believe it is U.S. Air Force. Other people in the military have told me they believe it's Air Force, but they're not sure if it's U.S. or not. I don't know if it's because they can't tell me whether it's U.S. or not. I don't know. Here are three, these are not TTAs, these are for fueling. They're for oil and other fuels. There's an obscurement right there, which should tell you something. Here is a TTA. This is the same kind of TTA that we gave to Israel. It's a very extremely powerful TTA right there. This is a very large installation, lots of living space in this installation. I don't know if this is some sort of camp with barracks of some kind. I don't know, but it really looks like that. There are other personnel. Here's some more oil Here is another TTA, same kind of round TTA that we gave to Israel, which means there are 2 of them on that island. Okay? Israel has 1. On this little teeny island, we have 2, and we have another installation here, a full installation. Here is an array, a very large array, a sequence of towers. Here is the largest. This thing is so gigantic. It spans miles wide and long and extremely high. We're talking maybe a couple football fields high. Do you see this shadow that it is casting? The shadow is so long. It's just gigantic, and it has sister towers down the way from it. Just huge towers. This one is a little bit smaller. This entire installation is an HTA. Here we go. Here is another area of arrays. You can see every single one of these round circles that are crossed. Those are arrays. You see them? Let me come in a little bit better on them. And there's a huge antenna right there. There's another one there, and they have antennas all the way around and all the way across. Here's its sister array with antennas. I don't know if you can see it. There's an antenna, there's an antenna, there's an antenna, there's an antenna. In this huge system that's running it. This is another array being built. This is another kind of array right here with antenna all the way through it. In every circle there are antennas inside the circles and along the outside of the circle and going into the circles. Here is another kind of array with antenna this way, this way, this way, and up. Another circle array, another circle array, another triangular antenna array with 1, 2, 3, 4 antennas around it, another one in the center. A box array here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 box arrays, and a crossed antenna array. So you see this thing is just replete with different arrays. Here's a very interesting array. All of this is one great big array. Here's another one. Totally different kind. This has a lot of experimentation going. Here's another gigantic circle array with different antenna in it. And then you've got a fence type array. This is for the space fence. This is a fence type array. I'm not sure if you can see it. I'll zoom a little bit more. This is a fence type array. Let me go back down here. See it all along here? A fence type array. All the way along here. Now, I want to show you how this was done. Remember, the origination point was about a third, a little more than that, a third between these two continents, which would put us right about here. And interestingly, it's not on this island with obscurements, and it's not this island, Georgetown, on an Ascension Island. It's neither one of those islands. What is there? Well, let's go down and look. down under the ocean on the ocean floor is one of many man-made structures. Look at this. And the reason this is not haphazardly done in nature is because of the symmetry. Horizontally, the points are perfectly across. Vertically, the points are perfectly across. And there is a square at its base. And there are tracks going to and from everywhere in this thing. This, in my humble opinion, is the diamond shape at the bottom of that anomaly that we saw. I believe this is the diamond shape at the bottom of that anomaly. And another thing that is very interesting, there is a line, okay, perhaps an undersea antenna buried under the ocean floor that goes directly to Georgetown on Ascension Island, directly to that island, right in there. And yesterday, there was a 5.3 magnitude earthquake just south of Ascension Island. It's part of the Ascension Island region, right along those tracks. It's possible that each and every one of these is underlaid part of the space fence, part of the TTA network. Now, just to show you, in this entire area, the entire area that this thing was in, this anomaly that was a frequency anomaly, a sonic anomaly, there were only 2 earthquakes from the Antarctic to the Arctic, all the way from the bottom to the very top. This entire portion of the world, there were only 2 earthquakes, and they happened in the exact area that that thing started in. The 2 days that it was running. The first day was a 4.9, the second day it was a 5.3, and then it ended. And if you'll notice, there is not one other earthquake in that entire region. And just to show you how interesting that really truly is, let me let you see the rest of the world. These are the earthquakes that are happening in the rest of the world in just those 2 days. There is not one section that goes from the bottom to the top, from the Antarctic to the Arctic, without any earthquakes in the last 2 days, except that section. Now, do I believe that that means that the actual reason for that anomaly was to create those 2 earthquakes? Well, we know it wasn't weather. We know 2 earthquakes did occur. It could have been for the space fence, that's true. It could have been for something totally different, or a number of experiments all at one time. Or it could have been to see what kind of frequency it would take to make that kind of earthquake, and if it could be done within a single day. We have 1 earthquake per day, and then it stopped. Was it the space fence? I don't know. With the earthquake's happenstance, I find that very doubtful because of the lack of earthquakes from the Arctic region all the way down to the Antarctic in fully a quarter of the Earth. This has got to be about 1/5 of the Earth, we'll say. 1/5 of the Earth has no earthquakes but where that thing originated. Very interesting. In my humble opinion, is the origination point of the emission that spanned way past Europe, and also I believe was powered by Ascension Island. Well, some information has come in that has borne everything that I said to be true, and there's more information besides. Someone mentioned to me that they thought that this was not in the atmosphere, but that this emission was in the ocean, under the water, in the sea. And I told him, I hadn't mentioned that, but I did mention that it did not have anything to do with weather. It had no effect on cloud formations, and I was under the impression it was therefore aquatic in nature. Well, I have some information to tell you. You remember all the TTAs at Georgetown on Ascension Island. There is a Tesla Tech Array base there. It is a U.S. military base along with some other people helping, but mostly U.S., Air Force, Army, and Navy. The name of the project is Ascension Island Hydroacoustic Data System. Here we see in this image, Ascension Island has a northern leg and a leg, but this is only showing the first two northern legs and southern legs. The first one, the southern leg, we've already found. The South Atlantic Hydroacoustic Diamond. There is a northern leg that I will show you, and then there is a secondary northern leg that I will show you. There are more southern legs to this island that I will show you. In this picture, you see the cable that was running, that same type of cable was running in the space fence on that TTA. The cover story for Ascension Island Hydroacoustic Data System is this. The United States Air Force Technical Applications Center, AFTAC, is tasked with monitoring compliance of nuclear test ban treaties for the U.S. AFTAC utilizes several different techniques, each designed to monitor a specific physical domain, i.e. underground, which means we have these TTA monitoring systems underground, space, and we've talked about the space fence. We also have our own platforms in space that are satellite based, and also oceans and other arenas than that. Together, these monitoring systems, equipment, and methods form the U.S. Atomic Energy Detection Systems, USAIDS. Now, this system is used in that fashion. It goes much further than this. What this does is, in this particular area, it will tell us if there are submarines that are ours or others, belonging to other people, particularly nuclear submarines, where they are, what vicinity they are with the U.S. and with our submarines. It's also used for communications. It's used for buoys and so forth, communications, and it is used to detect whether there have been nuclear bombs placed in areas where they do not belong. That is one of the many uses for this, but it's not all the uses for this. It's very possible that this day that this was emitted, that was the use for this. But there are more uses for this. Now, we've seen the Southern Atlantic Ascension Island Diamond. We've seen this arm of that array. We also remember the earthquakes that took place the 2 days that this emission took place. Here is one of the northern arms. This was probably the first arm that was mentioned, and you'll notice it's in this obscurement. This particular array is round. We cannot see it because it's being obscured. Alright, but I want you to notice where this is located. Okay, right at the 4 north fracture zone. What that means is it's a very delicate area in the ocean. It's well known for its capability to produce seismic activity, particularly earthquake. Now you'll notice this is one of the tectonic plates, this is a tectonic plate, this and this. These are 4 tectonic plates that have come to merge. And this pressure has moved this tectonic plates away from this. This line used to be level with this line. Let me back off a little bit. This line used to be level with this line, but this tectonic plate has moved it forward. Now, why would one of these arms, why would this particular arm of the Ascension Island array be placed at this very delicate zone where it could cause earthquakes? Well, when I have spoken to insiders, they've told me that one of the benefits of having a TTA in your region is that it can cause earthquakes somewhere else. Unfortunately, one of the liabilities is that when it does that, oftentimes it causes an earthquake where it's at. That's very interesting. Another thing that you might not be aware of is that the U.S. military has been working on perfecting tsunami technology. Russia has taken great strides in perfecting their tsunami technology. They boast, their officials, I've heard them myself, boast and brag that the 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami was their doing. Their TTA bombarded a very sensitive area east of Japan, out in the middle of the ocean, and caused that massive earthquake, resulting in a tidal wave. Alright? This appears to me to be that same kind of technology. Something that is capable of producing tsunami via hydroacoustic means. There's some other things I'd like to show you. That's the first array, the first arm of the array. You remember this went very, very far north, way past Europe. And here is the far north Arctic array. Here it is. You can see the grid right here, and they have a few more issues, land issues, but you can see the tracks from the underwater rig that went up there to build this. Alright, you can see all the lines that go to and from it, but this is actually the diamond, and there's a grid that goes over it. That's the Arctic arm of the Ascension Array. I am going to also note here that these types of aquatic emissions do devastation to aquatic life. They burn them to death. They cause acoustic drama, resulting in death. Many of these animals were tested in necropsy, and their necropsy showed that they died of acoustic trauma and were burned to death in the ocean. Hundreds of thousands, some of them millions. We're going to find more and more aquatic deaths washing up on the shore that get in the way of these emissions, these TTA emissions that are hydroaquatic. These emissions that are hydroacoustic emissions, they are devastating to sea life. I would venture to say that every time we see an emission like this take place in the ocean, there's going to be massive aquatic kills washing up on shores all over the areas that they were in. it may take a while for them to wash up to the shore. For instance, if the ocean is traveling to the west and the shores that they come on are America, it may take weeks for them to get there. But shores like the African coast and the west coast of Europe, washing up may take between a few days and a week or two. But they will be massive in nature. Whole schools of aquatic animals will die as they pass through these aquatic acoustic emissions. Let me show you something else that this South Atlantic diamond can do, powered by the Ascension Island hydroacoustic system. You see this flare of light. This is a sonic flare. It's coming up directly from that. It's heating up the clouds in the sky. You see, they're actually hot. It's causing heat in the sky and in the clouds, coming down way over there. It's actually skipping off the ionosphere and coming back down. I've mentioned this in other films of mine, and it is not exactly at Palatino. And as you see, this is not as far inland as Palatino. This is an inlet from the ocean on the eastern shore of Brazil, going inland in from the inlet right here. Let me show you where that is. Right here seems to be that inlet, and they were standing up over here. And as you notice, the southern arm of the Ascension Island hydroacoustic system, that diamond is right here, just east where they said it was. Now let me let you see what that flare hitting the ionosphere and being projected down from that ionosphere looks like from the International Space Station. Here is ISS capturing images. Now you see this light that is coming up to the atmosphere and stopping at the atmosphere. It's because it's being bounced from below on the ground or in the sea. It's hitting the atmosphere and it's moving the clouds. But even though it excites the clouds and causes the clouds to part from its way, it goes back down into the atmosphere. It goes back down to the Earth. Let's see what that looks like when it hits the Antarctic. You see this area that sound energy is causing the metal particulates and the ice and so forth to become incandescent. That sound is actually separating those clouds just like it did when it hit the ionosphere. That's what you're seeing, the separation of those clouds. Now, why are they doing that in the Antarctic? For the same reason they're doing it to Greenland and the same reason they're doing it to the Arctic, to melt the ice. It's all, whenever you wonder what in the world the PTB is doing, the powers that be, follow the money. Where is the money? What they're doing is, and there's documentation to this, I will try to put this documentation in the comment, in the description of this video. The documentation is the drive to drill for oil in the Arctic, in the Antarctic, and in Greenland. In the process, they're going to do their very level best to tax each and every one of us as much as they possibly can for our green for how green we live our lives. For every breath we take, we're going to be taxed for that under the guise of global warming, for our carbon footprint. And the whole reason that these Antarctic and Arctic and ice shelves are melting is because their TTAs are heating them. They're superheating them and causing them to melt. In so doing, we're being told that the sea tides are rising. That's to be expected somewhat. I don't think they're going to rise as much as the powers that be believe they're going to rise. But when you have things like Tsunami creating machines, who needs higher rising tides? You can just create the rising yourself.
Bill Gates is officially backing climate scientists who are lobbying for large-scale geoengineering projects to combat global warming, whether you believe that CO2 has anything to do with global warming or not.
My name is Scott Stevens. I was a television weatherman for 20 years. These chemtrails are absolutely required to impact whatever weather event they were designing. And the trails were an absolute necessary ingredient for them to achieve their weather modification goals. So we're finding the aerosols, the metal particulates, the weather engineering, whether it's scalar, ionic, or orgone, or the chi of the atmosphere. All of those can be used and leveraged to create weather events that are several standard deviations or outside what would be typically normal. Before jumping on the chemtrail bandwagon I needed a motive. Without a motive, you can't say what they're doing and why they're doing it. You have to have a motive. So the agenda was drought. The agenda was to kill the storm, at least in that one particular spot. You can kill a storm in place. That's easy to do with HAARP. You just change the polarization, you change the ionization of the atmosphere, and the storm will fall apart. And so it's very easy to add those particulates of aluminum, barium, and whatever else they want to put in there. And as you add heat to that, those particulates then radiate the heat into the atmosphere and it warms. Let's just say the storms can develop more violently, more quickly, in places that are not necessarily as where you would expect them to be. And we've got technologies available to us now that can do, continent-sized projects. Is all of the persistent trails behind it. So that tells me, Michael, that they are engineering this storm to a great degree. Now all of this stuff is chemtrail debris or chemtrail clouds that had been laid down over Utah and over southern Colorado earlier in the day. And if you control the weather, you're going to control the planet. It's that simple. The work we're doing will provide cover for others to come out. And I'm most interested in whistleblowers.
Hi, the subject of chemtrails keeps coming up, or at least came up while I was beginning my research on weather modification. I wasn't even a believer that they actually existed, that there was a trail separate from the regular condensation trail, and those trails being the chemtrails. And then we would have days like this, where you end up with a milky white sky with persistent trails. And this didn't happen just once in a while, but would happen fairly frequently. These days would occur most often before a storm would come in from the west. And in classical meteorology, that's okay, because that's where the moisture arrives first, at the higher levels, at those beginning levels of cirrus. And so you'd expect, if you've got jet trail up there seeding the sky, you're going to get contrails of some duration. What set these days apart was that the balloons, the radiosondes that go up, would come back reporting humidities 20%, 25%, 30%, way too low to account for the persistentness, the long duration of these contrails. So that led some people to believe that there was something else up there when we're talking about chemtrails. The man who whose work I first came across, his name was Clifford Carnicom, and he was down in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Again, the desert Southwest, you've got dry skies for, 9 months of the year. Again, with interludes as storms would move through there in the winter and also during the summer monsoon season. But even in Idaho, where I first became aware of the chemtrail phenomena, the skies were generally good for 100 miles visibility. On days like this, as you can see, we could probably count a half a dozen trails where the plane has been there and has left a trail which has resulted in the sky becoming cloudy. And I promise you, if we go look at the Denver radiosonde or the Cheyenne one just up the road here, we'll find that the humidity is less than 40%. So these trails should have persisted for less than 1 minute and likely less than 10 seconds.
Here's our discontinuities. That break right there, and along this trail, we see other breaks. Here, where the trail rolls over, got a wavelength, and then another break there.
So this spot from there to there denotes a wavelength. For me to come in and get on board the chemtrail phenomena, that conspiracy that I was honestly a little uncomfortable in jumping aboard, I needed a motive. I needed to know why these planes were up in the sky. There was talk and lab reports that there were biologicals, that we were looking at heavy metals, that there was this whole chemical concoction that these planes were spraying, and that is a very different mixture than water. I don't mind breathing water vapor. This stuff might be a different story. And when we begin to see the opacity of the sky changing so profoundly, I needed to know why. So I did something, took a little money. I took some webcams. I bought some Logitech Orbit webcams, little $99 things, hooked them up to a little computer and pointed them at the sky and let them grab a picture every 5 seconds, and then at the end of the day would render a movie. And it took 4 months before I began to figure out what the planes were doing up there. If we look off to the southern sky, you can see a group of those trails all together. And my discovery was that these planes were up there outlining the sky so that the weather makers can apply their electromagnetic solution, their HARP solutions, their solutions to change the weather. If you can add a particulate to the sky, you can apply heat to it. That heat is going to radiate or decay into the atmosphere. And if Lieutenant Colonel Bearden is right, and these beams are bidirectional, meaning you can drop energy into a zone, or you could pull energy out of the zone, then I would find these trails in and around all significant weather events. We would find them around hurricanes. We would find them around tornado outbreaks. We would find them around snowstorms. We would find them over top of heat waves. So within any of the weather that is manipulated or modified by these weather makers, we would find trails. And as I continue to look into this chemtrail phenomena, many nations were observing, seeing these chemtrails overhead. Up here, just below the sun, we've got a patch of cloud that continues to brighten up. That area of cloudiness is growing. It has been outlined by chemtrails. So these chemtrails are acting as a targeting, an alignment mechanism. So from space, you can deposit energy at very specific layers in the atmosphere. The other thing they can do is that the trails act like a water or a drop of dye in moving water. Much like if you go into your doctor's office for an MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, they flush your system, your circulatory system, with barium so they can see how it works. It gives them a way to look inside your body. Barium is barium and aluminum are some of the primary components that we're seeing with these trails in the skies and these chemtrails. Again, this happens before and during major weather events. My chemtrail photography has kind of evolved over the years. I started with this $99 Logitech webcam. When I was seeing the chemtrails flying, the detail, the texture in the clouds just was not being picked up by these cameras. So I ended up going with a high definition Panasonic, and this is just a beautiful, beautiful camera. Lets me lock it in at infinity and pick up some of that beautiful texture that when you see these electromagnetic tools beginning to stimulate the atmosphere, whatever way they want to do, I was finally beginning to pick that up visually so I could share it with you. Something that surveillance of the sky has afforded me over these past 4 years is the ability to pick out which planes are commercial and which ones are not. For a long time, and there's still even this misconception on the web that the short trails planes are regular commercial craft. This is not so. We see the long-lasting trails, the marking chemtrails, as I have called them, because they are simply out there marking the sky. They leave this thin wire, this thin metallic wire, and then it deforms. It changes shape as it moves through the atmosphere, is caught up in the atmosphere. They don't always, however, move with the clouds. I have seen on numerous occasions clouds, actually the chemtrails, moving through the clouds coherently. And this would not happen with the regular condensation trail. Another way of discerning which are chemtrails and contrails are the atmosphere, the meteorological targets that these planes fly through. You will see a deformed area in the trail off in the distance. We have the flat trail, it rolls, it dips and then rolls. These shorter trail planes will come along and mark precisely, with incredible precision, right where that trail breaks. Again, measuring where we have a discontinuity in the flow of the atmosphere. That's important. You won't get a United, an American, Southwest plane interested in the trails out ahead of them. These are chemtrail flights, and there are many, probably half of these weather modification flights leave no trail at all, making them very, very difficult, other than where they fly through the sky, to discern if they're commercial or a chemtrail flight.
They use Tesla technology to zap that dust to create high pressure. If you can create high pressure system, you know when you watch the Weather Channel back in the day, you've got H's and L's. H's and L's is high pressure and low pressure. If you can create high pressure system, heat rising, you can steer things around. And they use this to steer the ionosphere. Okay, you've got different levels of the atmosphere. One of them is the ionosphere where the jet stream is. And that jet stream is not a stream, it's a river. And it's literally going. And you can steer it around. Or they can steer it around. I wish we could. Okay, so here's an example of one of these ionospheric heaters. One. There's dozens of these around the planet now. This is the first one in Alaska. And if you want to talk about global warming, ionospheric heaters need to be in that conversation. Okay? It's an antenna array, it's Tesla technology, and they actually have to use two of these at the same time to heat the atmosphere and steer part of the ionosphere to direct the weather. And Tesla, he said, if you can maintain control of these frequencies, you can directly control the entire mental system of mankind.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really? To change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo-jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops, and if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine?
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting, Professor Michio Kaku. Thank you so much.
HAARP has been presented to the public as a program of scientific and academic research. U.S. documents, however, seem to suggest HAARP's main objective is to exploit the ionosphere for the Department of Defense. HAARP stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. It is based in Gakona, Alaska. It is jointly managed by the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy. It is part of a new generation of sophisticated weaponry under the U.S. Strategic Defense Initiative, otherwise known as Star Wars. Operated by the Air Force Research Laboratory Space Vehicles Directorate, HAARP constitutes a system of powerful antennas capable of creating controlled local modifications of the ionosphere, which can disrupt human mental processes, jam all global communications, change weather patterns over large areas, interfere with wildlife migration patterns, negatively affect your health, and unnaturally impact the Earth's upper atmosphere. Gene Manning and Dr. Nick Begich brought HAARP to the attention of the world with the book called Angels Don't Play This HAARP. Dr. Nick Begich learned that HAARP can manipulate global weather, hurt ecosystems, knock out electronic communications, and change moods and even mental states. He describes HAARP as a super powerful radio wave beaming technology that lifts areas of the ionosphere by focusing a beam and heating those areas. Electromagnetic waves then bounce back onto Earth and penetrate everything, living and dead. According to Dr. Bernard Eastland's patent, HAARP can cause total disruption of communications over a very large portion of the Earth, disrupting not only land-based communications, but also airborne communications, and sea communications as well. Can missile or aircraft destruction, deflection, or confusion, and weather modification. Put simply, the apparatus is a reversal of a radio telescope, just transmitting instead of receiving. It will boil the upper atmosphere. Captain Tyler, director of the United States Navy Electromagnetic Radiation Project, states that effects which could be stimulated chemically could also be stimulated electrically. With the right electromagnetic field, for example, you might be able to produce the same effects as psychoactive drugs. Countless suns in other galaxies spray cosmic rays in all directions continuously. Closer to home, our sun radiates gamma rays, X-rays, and shorter wavelengths of ultraviolet light. When they hit the outer layers of the Earth's atmosphere, these cosmic rays are absorbed by atoms, but in the process, electrons are knocked off. Thus, there is a constant flux of electrons at this altitude. The atoms are changed to positively charged ions. This process gave the ionosphere its name. Blown towards Earth on the solar wind, electrically charged particles follow Earth's magnetic field lines. Along such paths of least resistance, high-energy particles funnel towards the magnetic poles of the Earth, squeeze into a poleward current called the electrojet, and are dumped towards the Earth. Sometimes the electrojet dwindles, but other times a solar flare floods the system with high energy particles, and the sky lights up into the dancing, shifting curtains of the auroral display. On Friday the 13th, May 2005, we had the largest solar flare on record. When these flares actually strike the Earth, superstorms are formed. HAARP is the largest ionospheric heater in the world. The ground-based equipment will beam focused energy up to the ionosphere, where the beamed radio frequency waves would interact powerfully with charged particles that are always trapped there. Essentially, HAARP is a ground-based solar flare. In December 1915, the New York Times reported that the inventor Nikola Tesla had filed patent applications on the essential parts of a machine, possibilities of which test a layman's imagination and promise a parallel of Thor shooting thunderbolts from the sky to punish those who had angered the gods. Suffice it to say that the invention will go through space with a speed of 300 miles per second, a manless ship without propelling engine or wings, sent by electricity to any desired point on the globe on its errand of destruction, if destruction its manipulator wishes to effect. It is not a time, said Dr. Tesla, to go into the details of this thing. It is founded upon a principle that means great things in peace. It can be used for great things in war. But I repeat, this is no time to talk of such things. Nikola Tesla told the writer that he stands ready to divulge to the United States government the secret of his teleforce, with which he said airplane motors would be melted at a distance of 250 miles away. And who remembers when the Soviets launched a giant mirror into space? It was to have the luminescence of 10 moons and was said to be used to heat the polar regions for agriculture. The mirror seemed to fail, however, and they say it burnt up in the atmosphere. HAARP has the ability to generate such a mirror effect by causing a plasma cloud in the ionosphere that can direct solar radiation to desired targets. I received a report that HAARP was tested as a meteor deflection shield. It seems a meteor was directed straight towards the facility. Could we have the ability to hurl meteors at our own planet with such precision? I looked deeper and found that the Anchorage Daily News reported such an event. A meteor struck the ionosphere, the clouds dispersed at 1,000 miles per hour, and then a sonic boom. Many of the people in Anchorage thought it was the end of the world and sought refuge in their basements. And 3 hours later, an earthquake struck. The USA Today reported that Milosevic accused the U.S. of using HAARP in the Gulf War to cause his floods and earthquakes. HAARP's extremely low frequency waves penetrate everything and so are useful for submarine communications. Some believe, however, that this is causing the whales to beach themselves. HAARP's transmitter can penetrate land as well. Known as tomography, HAARP can peer into the Earth to find subterranean complexes, such as the one found under the Giza Plateau. Fox reported that deep down under the Great Pyramid, a subterranean complex was found. It was excavated by Zahi Hawass, the secretary of the Giza Plateau. What he found is also unbelievable.
This is the tomb of Osiris, the god of the underworld.
They later changed the name to the Osiris Shaft. Our leaders are phallus worshippers, after all.
But, to be fair, I did not excavate this tunnel yet. Then really I don't know where it leads us. But I always say that you never know what the sand and the tunnels of Egypt may hide of secrets.
Many believe that the Greys are actually subterranean beings, having existed on this planet for tens of thousands of years. History reports them as a worker race brought by the gods to do mining work. They were known as the Anunnaki. Reports have come from Dulce, New Mexico, of a war between these subterranean beings and our military. Eric von Daniken also reported discovering tunnels that covered thousands of miles under Central America. They have smooth walls and seem to be constructed with high technology, perhaps a laser drill. These are the very tunnels that the Incans hid their gold after discovering Cortez was not their god. Now consider this. When the Spaniards arrived on the beach, the Incans considered them to be their gods because they expected their gods to be men with facial hair and high technology. The Incans knew their job on this planet was to mine gold for the gods. This made the Spaniards very rich. Some ideas about HARP are not generated from this planet at all. Channeled information from the Pleiades, and direct contact from the Pleiadians themselves tell us that we live in a very special time. They came to tell us that we are at the beginning of a new great year. This is based on the 26,000-year cycle of the precession of the equinox, what we call the astrological cycle. We are now entering what could be termed the Great Day. For 13,000 years we have been asleep in the Great Night. Now as our solar system turns to face the photon belt radiating from the galactic core, we are coming awake in the age of man, the age of Aquarius, and we will ascend to new dimensions. Now, the Syrians, whom our leaders seem to follow, tell us a different version of this episode. They say there is no way we will survive this radiation. They tell us that we should build frequency modulators around the globe, a force field, to transport our planet to their solar system. HARP and its counterparts are just such a system. Can you imagine waking up to 2 suns? Isaac Bonowitz put occultism under the interdisciplinary microscope in his book Real Magic, dissecting and examining magic in a scientific but flexible way, and reporting it in plain language. This earned him the first degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in magic from Berkeley, signed by Ronald Reagan, who was governor of California at that time. In the book's section on parapsychology, he explores the scientific principles of human psi powers. And on page 69, he states that once we can get over the minor details of building an artificial antenna transmitter, 10 kilometers across, and figure out a translation method, we will be able to build a machine that will be able to read minds and send out thoughts of its own. Once we get to that point, I'm heading for a neutral country or else the UN. I emailed Isaac with a link to the HARP site, asked him when he was leaving. Further studies done by the military found that we are all psychic. They created a corporation known as SciTech. It's headed by Major Ed Dames. SciTech does what is called technical remote viewing. It is a scientifically repeatable problem-solving process done by a person to gain information about a specific target, anywhere in time, past, present, or future. And yet another great inventor was Patrick Flanagan, who at 14 years old created the neurophone. It is a device that transmits acoustic information directly into the brain by means of electromagnetic field. It has many applications as an enhanced learning machine or as a computer-to-brain interface. Patrick Flanagan states that he is acutely aware of the potential misuse of HARP technology for the implementation of electronic global mind control. So you see, that once we all have our chip in place, with the use of technology like the neurophone, that can transmit sounds to your brain, and holographic technology that can present things that are not there, coupled with a high-powered radio frequency modulators, our leaders can absolutely play God. An emanation of God could step from the clouds, cast a lightning bolt and tornado in your direction, while the booming voice of God commands you to kneel down before your Lord. So if you see these lying signs and wonders, know at least this: we live in amazing times, with amazing possibilities, good and bad. It is up to you to awaken to these possibilities and to use your time here under the sun for the benefit of all. The path we are currently taking leads only to disaster.
Control grid. Since ancient times, it has been the desire of the Illumins to wield control of the masses below, both to protect us from them and them from themselves. The tools through the ages have been effective, but always blunt and inaccurate. But now, with the release of new technology to the masses, we have the real ability to implement a control grid with finance, industry, government, and military under our strict control. We can safely shift the population into a new world, monitored and controlled by illumi Corp.
Technology such as the internet, GPS, and RFID chips are pillars of the invisible prison we are erecting around the people. Within the decade, we will have real ID cards that contain criminal records and pertinent information, all linked to federal databases. Cell phones will tell us where each individual is, linked to the same database. Through intelligence agencies and Homeland Security, we will monitor individuals who oppose the Great Plan and remove them from the grid. Quickly, the population will learn that they have a choice: support the system and benefit from its luxuries, or reject it and lose access to the grid.
Well, that was quite an overview. I hope it gave you an understanding of our process and basic overall structure here at illumi Corp. Don't worry if you can't remember specific details at the moment. Once assigned to your administrative branch, you will be shown the second illumi Corp training module. Your initiate supervisor will brief you on your specific duties at that point.
And they can use these systems, such as the X-band radar, to steer hurricanes, to steer storms. They can engineer these storms. They can fabricate them and send them wherever they want. Make it rain, make it flood, make a drought. So the next time someone tries to deny weather modification or manipulation or weather warfare, and you see skies like this, you know that frequencies and energies are being blasted through the atmosphere, the upper atmosphere.
The radar system that's highly visible at Pearl Harbor has been deployed, apparently to monitor the North's military activity. The Navy confirms the X-band mobile radar system set sail late last month. Nicknamed the golf ball, it is the world's most powerful mobile radar system. The Pentagon reportedly deployed it to monitor North Korea, which has made numerous military threats in recent weeks. Another Pearl Harbor-based warship will be headed to the region tomorrow. The USS Chung Hoon, a guided missile destroyer, will be deployed to the Western Pacific.
The U.S. Navy is reportedly deploying the massive floating platform sea-based X-band radar in the North Korea's coast, as part of the escalated tensions between Pyongyang, Seoul and Washington, that suggest a preemptive attack anytime soon. The platform, also known as SBX-1, is operated by the U.S. Missile Defense Agency, and is by far the largest phased array radar system on Earth. The official version for public entertainment is that SBX-1 is a mobile radar system used for accurate detection of missiles or any other object in space with ballistic trajectories, but conspiracy theorists believe it is a HARP weapon fully capable to trigger earthquakes and atmospheric disturbances within any range.
North Korea is to restart all nuclear facilities at its Yongbyon nuclear complex. The move further heightens tensions on the Korean peninsula. Pyongyang mothballed the Yongbyon plant as part of the six-party disarmament agreement in 2007.
Whatever wildcard the Illuminati shadow government is pulling out through North Korea and United States, a military attack seems to be the most likely scenario, although I do not dismiss a staged event of psychological nature, but assuming it is not a false flag, and the Illuminati are pulling the strings of their puppet Barack Obama for an intervention in North Korea, the deployment of the SBX-1 strongly suggests that environmental warfare is about to be used, and a massive earthquake might happen in North Korea anytime soon. Most people ignore that the US military had developed technology for environmental modification for decades, and the so-called high-frequency active or oral research program, also known as HARP, is not a scientific research program as advertised by the government. The program, which is based on Nikola Tesla's death ray technology, is under management of the US DoD, USAF Navy, and uses particle injection devices developed by Raytheon, Lockheed Martin and other military contractors specialized in high-tech mass destruction weapons. The HARP apparatus consists mostly in large phased array facilities known as antenna farms, spread in strategic places like Alaska and Puerto Rico, but apparently the US military have mobile platforms like the SBX-1 that crosses sea distances at high speed, and is fully capable of triggering earthquakes and steering hurricanes. If you are not entirely familiar with this subject, and how HARP technology is used for environmental warfare, in 2008 the late physicist Dr. Minnow Freund, whom was Director for Advanced Aerospace Materials and Devices at NASA's Ames Research Center in California, publicly admitted the relation between electrical disturbances on the planet's ionosphere and earthquakes. These disturbances are not only measurable through optical and infrared spectrometers, but also have been recorded worldwide prior to earthquakes, and are popularly known as HARP clouds. Dr. Freund was part of a team of NASA scientists working with experiments for manipulating the structure and measuring levels of stress of rocks, through high-intensity ultrasound waves, which certainly have military applications, and proves the existence of environmental modification programs of the US government. But the most interesting detail is that right after his public statements relating ionospheric disturbances and earthquakes, Dr. Froon suddenly developed brain cancer and died in 2012. If that was a coincidence or something else, I don't know, but he was the only scientist working for the US government to publicly address this matter. According to other scientists who investigated how HAARP is used as environmental warfare, such as Dr. Nick Begich and the late Dr. Rosalie Bertel, the high-powered radio transmitters at the antenna farms fire a massive amount of low-frequency microwaves onto the planet's ionosphere, which heats and reacts, firing back the ionized particle beams onto areas that may or not be military targets. At this point, the ionospheric microwaves interact with Earth's lithosphere, causing intense seismic activity. According to non-confirmed sources, the SBX-1 was conducting exercises in the coast of Miami one day prior to the 7.0 earthquake that destroyed Haiti in 2010. It was also reportedly conducting drills in the Sea of Japan before the 9.0 that triggered a massive tsunami in the coast of Honshu in 2011. If the US military is deploying this huge mobile radio transmitter platform in the North Korean coast, expect a vicious and silent military attack in the form of an earthquake of high magnitude that, if turns out to happen, will certainly be reported as a natural event by mainstream media.
F-22 fighter jets.
Considering that the North Korean government still did not attack South Korea or any North American target for what it's worth, a conventional preemptive strike will severely damage Obama's public image, and probably drag China and Russia into the matter. So the odds are that the US military will carry out an unconventional attack with secret technologies such as HAARP. If so, what consequences it will bring, only time will tell.
Korea's new president vowed to retaliate in the event of an attack. The country's rules of engagement have also been changed recently to enable a quicker response from local units, bypassing central command.
Guys, this is real. What? It's straight from a horror movie.
It is?
No, I'm just saying it looks like one.
Wait,
and it's moving so fast.
Look!
I know.
It's the official Hell vs. Heaven.
Hey guys, this is James with the Impossible channel. I'm going to make this a very quick video, but this is very simple, folks. What you're looking at is what it is. Coming out of a horror movie, that's for sure. And I'm going to leave the link under the description so you can access the original video that was posted on Instagram last week, if I'm not mistaken, in August 2017 in Georgia, United States of America. Remember folks, Georgia is right next to Florida, which is probably going to be hit by Hurricane Irma. We still don't know if it's going for New York or Florida. The forecast is kind of changing every time. So what we know is they might be seeding this region, right? Georgia, Florida, New York, and anomalies might show up. So for sure, if this is one of the anomalies that the government's able to do, wow, this is coming from a horror movie. This is coming from out of a horror movie. This is amazing.
And it's moving so fast.
Look!
I know.
It's the official Hell vs. Heaven.
Thanks to Joanna who captured this, right? So again, if you have any videos, send it over to thatimpossiblechannel@gmail.com. I'm going to thank you, everyone that's been sending so many information, videos, pictures, stories. This is amazing. And also, anything could happen from now on.
Guys, this is real.
It's big.
Straight from a horror movie.
And I hope to see you again.
No, I'm just saying it looks like one.
Have a wonderful week.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable John R. Roberts, Jr., Chief Justice of the United States of America.
The dramatization you just saw was meant to give you an idea of what grand jury service is all about. As you saw, grand juries differ from trial juries in many ways, but both require the participation of citizens, individual Americans like you. The ordinary citizen provides an important defense for the freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. Grand jury service does require a substantial amount of time and energy, but I'm confident you'll find it is time well spent and energy well directed. After all, the success of the People's Panel rests with you, the people. Serve well and be proud of the system that depends on you.